Good morning, everyone. Hope everybody's doing well this morning. It's nice to have a beautiful sunshiny day, maybe no storms this afternoon. My name is Tanya Romine, and I am a member of this congregation and your worship associate today. On behalf of the Reverend Dave Dunn, who is on a well-earned summer vacation, he will be returning July, our very own Dirk Bender, who will be delivering today's message. Intern Minister Liz Martin, Director of Religious Exploration Lexi T. Brown, and our music director Alex Peach, our greeters and our live technical team that's able to make the live stream possible. I would like to welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist of Metro Atlanta North, which we lovingly call UUMAN. UUMAN is a liberal faith community with the mission to nurture our spirit, strive for justice, and transform the world. No matter who you are, who you love, or where you are on your spiritual journey, all are welcome here. Welcome to all that are joining us remotely. Good morning. For any visitors who are here with us for the first time, and if you are comfortable in doing so, we would love it if you would stand up and tell us your name and where you're from so we can get to know you a little better. Do we have any visitors on my left? No? Good to see you. Really nice to see you, Pat. Welcome. Any other visitors on my left? Anyone on my right? Oh, we do. Good morning. Go ahead. Wonderful. Welcome. Thank you. Wonderful. Welcome. We're glad to have you. Nice to have you. I was going to say, any relation? That's great. We're glad to have everybody here this morning. Welcome. So I've got a few announcements for us today, and that is Atlanta Community Radio Station, WRFG, will be holding its next musical session event and its first ever outside Little 5 Points right here today at UUMAN. It's going to be from 4 to 6 p.m. 2-for-1 tickets are available for UUMAN members and supporters of Common Grounds Coffee House. You can get tickets and learn more about the 3 fantastic performers at wrfg.org. The Social Justice Ministry's monthly second hour is right after service today. Please join us to get more information on our current projects and how you can be a part of a community building work and fun. If you'll look in your program, you will see in the order of worship all our second hour offerings today, if you'd like to join us. And finally, today's message will include specific information about procurement and references to resistance movements in the face of Armenian genocide and the Holocaust. Parents may want their kids to take part in the pottery glazing activity in Fellowship Hall. Now, let's everybody stand up and say hello to your neighbors, hand and elbow of friendship.
Oh, all right. Everyone all comfortable now? I am so glad that the kids are in fact going and doing kid things, because this is definitely not a topic for kids. These words were written in 1980 by a 22-year-old Englishman who was deeply troubled by the helplessness he felt as he saw people he knew falling prey to right-wing extremism and cult membership. I was in the pub last night. A mutual friend of ours said he'd seen you in the uniform. Well, the leather belt looks manly and the black boots butch, but oh, what a bastard to get off. Promises, promises, they offer real solutions, but hatred is never won for long. It was so open-minded, but by someone blinded, and now your sign says closed. Promises, promises, they offer real solutions, but hatred has never won for long. I think we've lost our perception. I think we've lost sight of the goals we should be working for. I think we've lost our reason. We stumble blindly, and that vision must be restored. I wish that there was something I could do about it. I wish there was some way I could try to fight it, scream and shout it.
And now let us light our chalice together. It is now when we are called as witnesses of the world to mend it, to change its course, to restore it. It is now when we are called to act on our values, not to hide, not to fear, but to be bold and loud. It is now that we are called to continue our fight for justice, to organize and to speak up. It is now. Let us gather, let us give each other courage, and let us worship. And now, if you are willing and able, if you would please stand and sing our opening hymn, number 87, in the hardback hymnal, Nearer My God to Thee. Alex will play through once, and then we will sing together. At this point in our service, we share our joys with each other to magnify them and our sorrows to divide the weight of their pain. If you are so moved, please feel free to come forward to this microphone and state your name and drop a pebble in the bowl and express a joy or a sorrow that you may have. For those attending via our live stream, if you have a joy or a sorrow that you would like to share this morning, please type it in the chat.
Going here, I guess I'm still a visitor. My joy, I guess, is pretty broad, and it probably affects all of us. I'm just thankful the world didn't end up in nuclear war last week. I mean, considering all the things that can happen, how much chaos there is, it's honestly a miracle every day that something doesn't go worse.
Hi, my name is Erin. I've been visiting for a while. I just wanted to share the joy that Ash's sermon last week inspired me to make some changes in my professional presentation on how I present myself to people. So I appreciated that inspiration.
I'm Don Gross. A few weeks ago, I had relayed to you that my daughter, Robin Stigall, had been named Georgia's Dietitian of the Year by the Georgia Dietetics Association. A couple of weeks ago, she returned from Italy, where she was there with a contingent of dietitians studying Mediterranean foods. Well, while in Rome, at a luncheon, she was seated at a table with an archbishop from the Vatican. She said that he was very well read, and they engaged in a very good conversation, and that he was inquiring about her profession. So I thought about that, and I thought, well, I knew she was spreading the word about dietetics, but I never dreamed it would reach all the way into the Vatican.
Hi, I'm Joan Rossi. I'm a member here. I would like to wish a happy 50th wedding anniversary to my best friends in St. Louis, Tom and Janet. Hopefully they're watching live stream, but they have been our family, our ride and die people through all kinds of things through life for over 40 years. And so I'm really, really happy to wish them a happy anniversary.
And online, we have a couple, Rosie and Bob Pop. They celebrated their 42nd anniversary on Friday, and they are so glad they found each other. They're definitely made for one another, aren't they? Lexi says she has a concern. Her dad is in the hospital this weekend for a brain bleed. They are doing tests. Please keep him in your thoughts and reach out if you feel like it. I'm going to drop one final pebble. Oh, I'm sorry, you snuck up on me. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Valeria Camaño. I'm a member of this congregation. So, what is today, Sunday? Friday, one of my mom's close family friends passed away. We've been friends with the family for several years, and they're very, very, very devoutly Catholic, but she passed away of cancer. She was 28 years old. So if you guys could keep her family, and all her siblings in your hearts. Thank you.
Anyone else? I will drop one final pebble for those joys and sorrows that are too tender to escape the folds of our hearts, if we will all keep one another in our hearts for the week.
Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the work and the support of Reverend Kleber Van Zandt V, the Minister Emeritus of the UU Congregation of Venice, Florida. You see, after I had picked Theodore Parker's pistol as my sermon title, I started rooting around online to see what I could see. And turned out he'd given a sermon with that exact sermon title back in 2007. So I thought, well, I better get in touch with him lest he stumble around the UUMAN.org website and see this. Who's that brat who stole my ideas? And he couldn't have been more lovely. He encouraged me to, go out there and break a leg and all that good stuff. But he also, more importantly, he steered me in the direction of a really good, credible biography of Theodore Parker that I used as the background for, some of the quotes and things that you're going to hear in this sermon. So thank you so much, Reverend Van Zandt. All kinds of people have all kinds of feelings about firearms. Unitarian minister Theodore Parker, who was born in 1810 and died just a year before the start of the American Civil War in 1860, he felt he needed a loaded pistol. This need became especially acute with the passage of the abominable Fugitive Slave Act in 1850, which made it legal to kidnap any enslaved people who'd escaped to states where slavery had been abolished. Slave catcher was a job title back in the day. I haven't been able to find any reliable information on the income of these people, but we do know that in 1850, an enslaved person was worth, on average, about $400. The average per capita annual income was about $110. It would seem that a couple of successful captures per year would net a slave catcher at least the average annual income, if that slave catcher could do it in enemy territory, like Massachusetts, that is. Back to Parker's pistol. Given that we're talking about the 1850s, this pistol would have been a percussion-style single shot, a far cry from the much more deadly multi-round pistols that were in development but not necessarily reliable or safe to use. That single-shot pistol, that was the tool he sometimes had at hand that he felt he needed. He needed it to be loaded and at his side to defend against the armed individuals who captured enslaved people, the slave catchers, who might think that they could capture black Americans being sheltered by Theodore Parker. Since Parker spoke openly about arming himself, the very strong implication, to put it in more modern more modern phraseology, would be, if you come for them, you got to get past me and my gang, and we're packing, and we are not the least bit hesitant to use deadly force to stop you. As some of you know, civil rights hero and Union soldier Harriet Tubman had the same attitude. People who are the object of this ire, the slave catchers, often found themselves not welcome in what we might think of as Parker's turf, which was Boston and its environs. This had been a place where militant abolitionism had flourished for decades. This had been a place, and it was also an important stop on the Underground Railroad, where people could then have a decent shot at escaping to freedom in Canada. Of course, after 1850, many formerly enslaved blacks bravely chose to stay in the nation of their birth and their forebears' birth, which they ferociously believed to be theirs as much as anyone's. They chose to stay and fight, and their pivotal efforts helped demolish the slave owners' rebellion. Theirs is a story for another time. Suffice to say that some enslaved people joined the gang that included Parker, the Boston Vigilance Committee, which numbered in the hundreds but was mostly white allies. More blacks joined an allied gang, the New England Freedom Association, which, it's worth noting, they had several women in their leadership. Parker's gang had none. It's worth noting that the black members who were in Parker's gang were generally more willing to employ violence than the white members to achieve the desired ends. Parker was, of course, a Unitarian, but it's important to understand what Unitarianism meant all those years ago. It was absolutely a Christian denomination. It was absolutely a theistic denomination. Parker's notion of Christianity, to put it in the simplest terms that I can, was that the central message about God's love is something everyone already knows. Christianity didn't require miracles. Christianity didn't require holy texts. Perhaps most heretical at the time to some, Christianity didn't even require the presence of Jesus, no matter how much he and others did, and still do, revere this prophet's teachings. Parker, of course, opposed the institution of slavery and considered it to be an abomination. Now, there are revisionists who can poke holes in his ethics and find traces of white supremacy here and there. To that, I say, perhaps unhelpfully, find me a white guy from the time who wasn't brought up at least a little bit of a white supremacist. If by white supremacist you mean thinking along the lines of course, skin color doesn't matter, we're all human beings at their core, but those people may need some time to catch up intellectually where we white folks are. That was about as enlightened as you got for most white folks. Let's just say that abolitionism had a common goal, but it was fought by people with varying reasons for that opposition. Parker, from what I can tell, believed all his fellow human beings had worth and dignity and had the right to be free. Parker's journey from smart aleck student who attended classes but never degreed at Harvard, mostly because he couldn't afford it, to a smart aleck young author, to an ordained minister in Roxbury, Massachusetts, and still a smart aleck, definitely someone who thought he was the smartest guy in the room, probably because he was. That tale is an entertaining one. For the purposes of this sermon, we'll jump to 1842, when Parker was 32 and encouraging those who'd escaped from slavery to take refuge in his state, on his turf. He boldly claimed, quote, "We have not the slightest fear that any one of them will be taken from us and carried into bondage." His message of freedom, not just from physical bondage, but the spiritual bondage of dogma and supposedly holy texts, found a very large audience. His sermons were delivered in the Boston Music Hall, filled to its 2,000-seat capacity week after week after week. It's easy to see how, with this sort of following, he could help muster the aforementioned Boston Vigilance Committee. You might note that I've already referred to it as a gang, and by that I mean no disrespect. Rather, I'm using today's terminology to describe how such a committee would be viewed in the context of the law. Because once the Fugitive Slave Act was passed in 1850, this committee was a gang. It was operating outside the law, no matter how unpopular that law was on Parker's turf. They had their stunning strategic successes. One involved 60 of the gang showing up at a hotel where 2 of the slave catchers were staying, forcing the hotelier to produce the guests. Parker said, quote, "I informed them that they were not safe another night, that I had stood between them and violence once. I would not promise to do it again." They were considerably frightened, end quote. So much so that between the confrontation and having their stagecoach smashed up, they both boarded a train to New York. As for the married couple that he was sheltering at the time, Parker armed the husband with, I'm quoting his biographer here, a revolver, a pistol, and a dirk. Y'all know what a dirk is, right? Right? It's a dagger, okay. But even so, there was only so much they could do to shelter enslaved people. And there was definitely nothing they could do to prevent what the slave owners chose to do to our union en masse. He could sponsor the likes of John Brown and write that slaves were fully justified in murdering their owners. But there was little Parker could do to stem the incurable tuberculosis he contracted, no doubt exasperated by his relentlessly driven work schedule. No antibiotics would exist for another 70 years. In order to spend his final days with dear friends he'd not seen in years, he voyaged to Florence. He died within a month of arrival. He was 49. The following year was Fort Sumter and 4 horrible months that followed. 4 horrible years that followed our American Civil War. And as noble as this armed conflict was, I have to quote W.T. Sherman. He famously stated about young, raw recruits who'd never seen battle, quote, "There's many a boy here today who looks on war as all glory, but it is all hell." Furthermore, the conflict was, as always, a rich man's war and a poor man's fight. 750,000 American lives were lost as a result. Fully 2/3 of them were lost not to a gunshot nor a bayonet to vital organs, but rather to just about the most miserable diseases imaginable. As for Parker's legacy in the years that followed, no less a civil rights giant than Frederick Douglass considered Parker a brother in arms. So much so that when the opportunity presented himself, Douglass made sure to pay Parker his final respects. I'm quoting here from UU World. Touring Europe in 1887, Frederick Douglass took an overnight train from Rome to Florence, arriving early on May the 10th. Quote, "Our first move outward after coffee was to visit the grave of Theodore Parker," he wrote later that day. He had arranged to arrive on the anniversary of his friend's death in Florence, 27 years before. And as we zoom forward to the present day, I'd be remiss not to mention other brave armed resistance movements. You might have already heard of the Jews in Warsaw, who were among many who fought tenaciously against their Nazi oppressors. Perhaps lesser known was the fearless United Partisan Organization in Nazi-occupied Vilna, Lithuania, who were willing to take on the Nazi army, even as their own people in the ghetto urged restraint and forced these armed fighters to flee to the surrounding woods. That's where they regrouped with other armed resistors, other armed partisans, and to inflict as many casualties among the Nazis as they fought to their own deaths. Prior to that, and perhaps serving as some inspiration to those I just mentioned who followed them on the historical timeline, were such armed resistors as the Armenians at Musa Dagh in 1915. They were very lightly armed, mostly just some repeater rifles, yet they fought off well-trained and well-armed Ottoman Empire troops that vastly outnumbered them for 53 days. They were rescued by the French Navy, whose ships were able to lend artillery support. This enabled 4,000 Armenian civilians safe passage. Enough jumping around the timeline. It's 2025. We are witnessing, at least on screen, if not in person, truly outrageous and, in my humble opinion, blatantly unconstitutional abuses of power by our federal government. Last weekend, we witnessed an act of war committed without the approval of Congress and certainly not of the American people. And for months prior to that, and continuing today even as I speak, our government isn't even bothering with the appearance of acknowledging the due process demanded in those words in the 5th and 14th Amendments. Just Monday, the right-wing stooges on our Supreme Court wadded up those amendments and set them on fire in their 6-3 Department of Homeland Security versus DVD ruling. And why is that due process being denied? Because our president whined about the impossibility of conducting, his words, millions of trials. Yeah, wouldn't that be crazy? Putting us in a position where we'd have to conduct millions of trials to ensure due process before you can fulfill your sick campaign promise to conduct mass deportations because that's what you promised your cult following? I'm only talking about his utter abandonment of habeas corpus, which has been accepted law since 1215. I could spend the next hour documenting the atrocities this administration and their willing executioners have committed against LGBTQIA plus rights, healthcare rights, public education, public broadcasting, birthright citizenship, racial justice, workers' rights, and our environment. This president knows that no matter how far his approvals slide, there will always be millions who will walk off a cliff if he told them to do so, and who will, more importantly, show up for his Bund rallies in 2028. That support from the radicalized followers is what will continue to fuel this jalopy until the end of its road. So the question is, regarding where we are on the timeline, are we at that point where we are going to need to collectively arm ourselves? Do we need to spend the rather modest sum needed to procure a name-brand handgun and an adequate supply of ammo? It's only about $600 for a reliable device and its projectiles capable of killing several human beings with just a round apiece. And a weapons carry license, and for a weapons carry license, one need not bother spending the $75 typically asked for in a Georgia county. You can just open carry and save that licensing fee. It's a pretty cheap cost of entry to arming yourself like Parker did. Is it time to enter? Are we there yet? Without giving too much of an answer that sounds like I'm running for political office and unwilling to give a simple yes or no answer, I'm afraid I'm going to have to say the magic words, the two magic words. It depends. It depends on where you are. Are you where you're going to be able to even make an appearance because you've been tipped off to the presence of federal agents? Or are you living in a neighborhood where you feel you might wind up being threatened on your own property or even in your own home by people who take exception to your political views? It also depends on how one defines arms. My sermon focuses on a historical figure's use of a pistol as a deterrent. I've already told you how cheap and easy pistols are to purchase and use, but there are, of course, other arms, not necessarily firearms, that can be utilized. Parker didn't just utilize and supply to others firearms. He found knives and even swords to be useful. Today, along with blades, there are the somewhat chillingly categorized, less lethal arms, such as chemical spray. And there are always various types of truncheons. And not to sound too cold-blooded about it, but these non-firearms also have their uses. Are we there yet? If you're over the age of 30, ask yourself, after the 2000 election, the so-called Brooks Brothers mob of W. Bush supporters decided they would descend upon and intimidate the Florida election officials who were trying to conduct a recount. How much better off would our nation be, how the world would be, if a significantly larger group of armed citizens had been waiting for them that first morning of the Bush supporters' military offensive outside their hotel door and let them know in no uncertain terms that they were not going anywhere? I'd ask 500,000 Iraqis about their opinions, but unfortunately, they are unavailable to speculate. Are we there yet? Y'all will have to come to your own conclusions. To channel Parker, I will answer it thus. My eyes can see but a little ways, but from what I can see, we're never going to bend the arc of the universe towards justice by being comically overmatched in firepower. That said, I also believe we can't conscientiously advocate escalating from brave, strictly nonviolent methods, then escalating to what would be the deployment of stochastic violence, where you're openly threatening violence, to escalating to actual violence. We can't do that without having exhausted every reasonable method of courageous resistance. We've seen our own minister being willing to be hauled away and locked up in opposition to the infrastructure of a militarized civilian police force. We've seen a U.S. senator slammed to the ground for simply trying to ask a question. And there are many examples of bravery happening right now, and I'm not going to cite them in the interests of time. It's exhausting to decide whether the nonviolent approach has been exhausted. When Malcolm X said, "by any means necessary," I think we all understand it's how you define necessary. Are we there yet? I hope not, and I desperately want to believe that we're not. But I can't stop believing more and more with every passing day that we absolutely are there. Thank you.
In an effort to fulfill and further the vision and mission of this congregation, we ask that our members and friends share of their time, talent, and treasure. With this, we will now take the offering. You may also use the Give Now option in the Breeze app. This month's 50/50 recipient is Family Promise. Any checks specifically designated for 50/50 or any Breeze donation specifying Give to 50/50 this month will go to support their work. Please stand as you are willing and able in joining us in singing hymn number 168, One More Step from the hardback hymnal. Now, if you will please join me as we extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
My benediction is by Raymond Douglas Davies. Here's wishing you the bluest sky and hoping something better comes tomorrow, hoping all the verses rhyme and the very best of choruses. To follow all the doubt and sadness, I know that better things are on the way. Go in peace and enjoy the week.